Welcome to the Hardwonwisdom podcast with best-selling author Fawn Germer and corporate innovator Michelle Brigman. Come here weekly for career and life-changing conversations with some of today's most influential thought leaders, senior executives, and trailblazers who will share their mentoring wisdom. This podcast is brought to you by the Women's Leadership Network.
Hi, I'm Fawn Germer.
And I'm Michelle Brigman.
And this is the Hardwonwisdom podcast. Today, for all of you who ever have trouble figuring out what to say, how to say it, when to say it, if you should say it, we got a new dose of energy for you. And that is Sam Horn, who is the founder of the Tongue Food Training Institute. I mean, that's what it says on her bio. She's written 10 books. She just had a new book come out, which is called Talking on Eggshells, Soft Skills for Hard Conversations. I love that. I love Sam. She's been a fixture in my life and at some incredible touch points, but she is going to school you on how to get the right words out of your mouth. And we all have trouble with that. And you know, anybody whose first book was called Tongue Fu knows about how to get the words out of the mouth. So, Sam, welcome.
Thank you so much, Fawn and Michelle. I've really been looking forward to sharing some stories and insights with your listeners.
That is so great. And if you could, I want you to start by telling us about your book, because we were just talking about it. And this is a book that brings everything together from your other books, updates it, and it's kind of a game changer for the rest of us. So tell us about Talking on Eggshells.
Talking on Eggshells, McKinsey said that rudeness is getting worse and incivility is on the rise. And I think whether it's at work or at home or at school or in public, we all deal with people and it seems like we can't say anything right. We're tiptoeing around them because it might trigger them. So this book is what to say when you don't know what to say in all these character building situations we face every day.
And what made you decide that the time was right for this and what the message was that you were going to have?
You know, I will always remember I was hired by OutSystems, which is a European company, because the people in their call center were ghosting their customers. They have a lot of young people, and if someone was upset or angry or something was broken, a problem, they just didn't know how to deal with it. They had grown up communicating with their thumbs, IRL and LOL and so forth, and they did not know how to have these hard conversations, so they just didn't have these hard conversations. I realized we all need a little help here.
Yeah. You know, I have to say, I forgot to tell our listeners, she is not just an author. Sam is a big speaker, big consultant, and just has been a force in so many lives. She, you know, when I first met her, she was in charge of the writing group in the National Speakers Association. And my first book was so hard to get published. And I finally got it published, and then it took off like a rocket ship. And I didn't know what to do. Everybody was wanting my time and I was overwhelmed and I was scared. And I wrote her and I said, I need some mentoring. And that began this relationship, which has been really very key for me for a long time. And she's been that to so many people. And the thing I like about what you've taught so many people is that you shouldn't be afraid of a difficult conversation. You shouldn't be afraid of a bully. There are things you can do to be effective in your talking. So if you were going to sit somebody down who might not have the most confidence in that department, what would be the key things you would tell them?
Okay, unless someone's driving right now, get a piece of paper, because we're going to draw a vertical line down the center, and on the top of the left-hand column, put words to lose, and on the top of the right-hand column, put words to use. And here's why we're going to do this, because at the end of our conversation, you can post this on your refrigerator. You can put this by your laptop. Yeah. You can put it, and it is going to do it's going to do three words. Steve Persante, who is the publisher of Barrett Kohler, was one of my publishers. Do you know what his criteria is for publishing a book?
Make money.
Yeah, there you go. Right. 2 words. And the other one, all that. Show the shift, right? What's not working, what could work? What am I doing wrong? How can I do it right? How can we not shame behavior? How can we shape behavior? How can I go from being a critic to being a coach? How can we contribute to our relationships instead of compromise them? So I have all these situations, which is, here's what we often say, it's on the tip of our tongue, and it makes it worse. What can we say instead that will actually make it better? So if you like, we can share some of these situations, and the next time we're about to let loose what's on the tip of our tongue, we can hold our tongue and say something that actually creates cooperation instead of conflict. Sound good?
It does, but tell me the words to lose and words to use.
Yep.
What
Okay.
goes in that? And you said it was going to do 3 things.
Okay, is we're going to show the shift. And people say, Sam, how does your brain work? I juxtapose everything. I think it is the quickest way to make complex ideas crystal clear. So see, the 3 of us could talk for like an hour, and at the end, people would have pages of notes, but it's hard to access it and it's hard to make it actionable. However, if we have, what to do when people are disagreeing, here's a word to lose, and here's a word to use. What to do when people are complaining, here's words to lose, here's words to use. Then we are crystal clear from now on. Whenever we're in that situation, people are blaming each other. So, someone is accusing us of something that's not true. This doesn't help. This does. We know exactly what to say in that situation. And we finally have the confidence to have those conversations instead of, once again, to head the other direction.
Got some examples?
Yeah, I saw this online. I know you have a download online too of this. So definitely, because this is good stuff.
Okay, so let's put wrong. Somebody makes a mistake. Somebody does something wrong. So here's a 60-second story that shows the transformational impact of words that have ripple effects, for better or for worse. So I'm visiting my son, Andrew, in New York, and his son, Hero, is about a year old. We're getting caught up in the living room, and Hero crawls across the floor, and there's a guitar on a stand in the corner. He hauls himself up on the stand. He starts banging on the strings. Now, Andrew, over on the left, could have said no. He could have yanked the guitar away. He could have said, leave the guitar alone. Do you know what Andrew said? One word: gentle. And in that moment, I saw Hero's face transform. And he reached over and he went strum, strum, strum. And there were bells on the window, and he reached up, he went ring, ring, ring. And in that moment, Hero made music because Andrew chose to shape his behavior instead of shame it. So over on the left-hand column, put the word shame. And the word, we often use the word should. You should have been more careful, or stop. Stop doing that, or don't do that. The challenge is when we tell people to stop interrupting me, don't run around the pool, don't get mad, we reinforce the very thing we don't want. If instead we think about what we do want instead of what we don't want, what we want them to start instead of what we want them to stop, then, just like Hero, he starts gently strumming the strings instead of banging on the guitar.
Wow. That's a great story. Yeah, got another one?
Okay, Fawn. Is that a rhetorical question?
Just like pull out the stack of stories.
Well, she's a storyteller.
Well, and let's think about your audience, because I know that we have people who work in organizations, we have people who are in relationships, people with kids, people who are maybe teachers, people out in the public in retail customer service. So let's talk about a situation with my 84-year-old Aunt Kay. So over on the left, put the word, put someone's mad at us. Someone is taking their frustration out on us. What can we do? So here's the story, and then we'll unpack it with words to lose and words to use. My 84-year-old Aunt Kay drives to the hospital 5 days a week and volunteers. And she did that even through COVID. And I asked her what it was like working at a hospital at the front desk during COVID. And she said, stressful. And I said, what's an example? And she said, last week, a woman ran in holding her phone up saying, my daughter just texted me. She's in the ER. She's been in an accident. I need to get in to see her. Well, the policy was no visitors or one visitor per patient per day. So Aunt Kay called the ER. There was somebody already with the daughter. So Aunt Kay had to tell the mother she could not get in to see her daughter. She lost it, and she's yelling and screaming. Now, over on the left, put the words "how rude," right? Because so often when people are upset and taking their anger, it's "how rude, I can't believe this. This isn't my fault. Why are they blaming me?" All of those words are reactions, right? Mm-hmm. Over on the right, put these 4 words: how would I feel? How would I feel if my daughter were in the ER and I couldn't get in to see her? It moved her from contempt to compassion. And it gave her it moved her from anger to incentive, because it gave her the incentive to, instead of thinking there's nothing I can do about this, to, is there something I can do about this? And she called the ER and she said, who's with the daughter? It was the Uber driver had brought her in. Gosh. So she explained to the Uber driver what was happening, thanked him, he left, and the mother could be with the daughter. And it's because she went from contempt to compassion, from impatience to empathy, by asking herself, how would I feel? And that gave her the incentive to see if there was something she could do, instead of shrugging her shoulders and saying, there's nothing I can do.
So this was such a good example, because, my career, customer service, right? A lot of the folks, they're dealing with customers, clients, stakeholders. And I was reading an article the other day that was talking about, I'm going to turn this on, like performance reviews. What is good? We all go through performance reviews, and it's like, did you meet expectations? Were you above expectations, below, like, what does that mean? And what you're sharing with me, not only how to handle a situation, but think about if you were to turn that on performance, to say, let's use this one example. Meet expectations is, well, you followed the policy and you told the lady, I'm sorry, only one person is. But if you want to exceed expectations, and you're able to apply some of these skills, then you would start thinking about, all right, how could I have exceeded expectations? Well, I decided to use these skills, make the phone call in the back, and find out who was there to at least help diffuse the situation and, move everybody forward. And I just think about, in very practical terms, we all get stuck so often in just reaction mode that we never pause long enough to really have empathy.
Yeah.
Put ourselves in their shoes, instead of taking everything personally and feeling defensive to where you just lock everybody down into, it's a no-win situation. Your aunt's upset at the desk. The mom's upset. The daughter wants her mom. Like, everybody's upset in that situation. And typically what happens is, we just all would have been ticked off and nobody would have been able to think creatively. So very practically, like, I love that example, and being able to think of, right now, you're teaching a way that everybody wins.
Well, Michelle, when you said that thing about how we operate out of being reactive, I think that's really at the core of what, Sam's saying we have to do right now, because we're in such a reactive moment in history. Amen. And so, this is such a huge question, which is because we are so reactive. We are so trigger reactive, because we're mad about people and their politics, and we're mad about the Karens, and they're mad about everything. How do we keep from being reactive and go to be empathetic and effective?
I love what the two of you are saying, because you've gone right to the crux of this book and of this issue and your words. Over on the left, put reactive, and over on the right, put proactive, because that's what this book is about. How, instead of being reactive, can we be proactive? And so I'll give an example. Over on the left, though, put find fault. Over on the right, put find solution. And here's one of my favorite examples, is that in the book, we call this interpersonal situational awareness, because we've all heard of situational awareness, right? Well, now this is interpersonal situational awareness. And Desmond Tutu said, we've got to stop pulling people out of the river. We've got to go upstream and find out why they're falling in, right?
Oh,
So
wow.
isn't that a lovely quote?
Yeah.
That's what we're doing, is we're thinking upstream, right? We're anticipating the consequences of our reaction. We're asking ourselves, how can I make this better? How could I be the pattern interrupt? So here's a wonderful example of it, is that there was a CEO in a meeting, and so very quickly, here's what happened. This is an advertising agency. One of their VIP clients was coming in for 9 a.m. meeting. The guy in charge of that account got sick, called the receptionist, said, I can't be there. Ask Tom to take care of it. Well, Tom came in the back way. The receptionist never see him. The head of this huge account came in. No one was there. He stormed out. He said, if this is how you take care of your VIP clients, I'm taking my business somewhere else. So the CEO convened a meeting to find out what the heck happened. Over on the left, put the words, what happened? Because the words what happened rarely help. They actually encourage people to say, well, I called the reception said, don't blame me. All of this. It encourages people to find fault. Instead, we do a pattern interrupt. It's like, literally, I know you both played sport. You make a tee and you say, time out, or you put your hand up like a policeman and say, wait, or stop, or enough. Because if we try to talk over people who are arguing, disagreeing, pointing fingers, what will they do? Get louder.
Mm-hmm.
When we do this, we cause a pause, and then we say these magic words. Let's not do this. Or we can say, this won't help. Instead, let's figure out how we can apologize to this client, reassure him that, that this is not the way we normally roll, ask for so that we can. And when in the moment of things going south, pattern interrupt like this, and then we move people to finding solutions instead of fault. In fact, John F. Kennedy said, our task is not to fix the blame for the past. It's to fix the course for the future.
Wow.
Thoughts?
Well, I think you're very right about that.
Mm-hmm.
What about when it's not such a business thing, but I love this idea, talking on eggshells. What about just communicating in relationships? People who can be reactive and then, lose friends, lose loved ones. How?
Okay, so let's give an example of that in a personal life, and then we'll talk about what about family members who have diametrically opposed political opinions or vaccinations or immigrants or whatever, and they're not talking to each other anymore, right? So let's get to that. One quick example to show how we can do this at home, because I had friends who went on a 2-week vacation. They came home, they walked into the house, the place smelled to high heaven. They start walking around trying to figure out where the smell is coming from. They go in the kitchen, the refrigerator door is standing wide open, and said, the blaming began. Well, you were the last one in the house. Don't blame me. You're the one who. And she remembered this idea and she went, yo, which is another pattern interrupt. And she said, this won't get the refrigerator cleaned up. Instead, let's everyone pitch in, take care of this mess. And from now on, when we leave for vacation, someone's in charge of going around and, shutting things down and closing things up. So once again, ask ourselves, is what's happening serving any good purpose? Blaming, arguing, kvetching about what went wrong does not undo the past.
And how are they going to learn? I mean, sorry, but Sam, how are they going to learn if I'm not letting them know clearly that this is a bad thing or a problem?
I'm so glad you brought that. Go ahead. It's Michelle, because there was a supervisor in a workshop one time, and he was really having a challenge with this. He said, Sam, I'm in charge of training new hires. He said, I thought it was my job to tell them what they're doing wrong. And I had the privilege of working for Rod Laver in the tennis industry. And so I'm going to tell a very short story. We just put on a national tennis camp. Rocket asked if I wanted to hit as a reward for this very intense few weeks. Yeah, would I want to hit with Rocket? You bet. So he's making me work for it, running me right, left, etc. Finally, he throws up a weak lob. I come up and I have an easy overhead, and I'm going to take a game off Rocket. And in my eagerness, I committed the cardinal sin of overheads. Do either of you play tennis by any chance?
Not for 25 years.
Okay. Well, instead of keeping my eyes on the ball, I looked where I was going to put the ball. I didn't hit the ball. I missed the ball. I took this mighty whiff. It's so humiliating. Right. I said, oh, what a stupid mistake. I know better than that. I should have kept my eye. And Rocket was known for his sportsmanship. And he came over and he beckoned me over. He said, Sam, champions never use the word should. He said, the second they make a mistake, they're already thinking about how they can get it back. So I talked with this supervisor because whether we're a parent, whether we're a supervisor, most of us think by telling them what they did wrong, they will know what to do right. Actually, we're coming across as a critic. They are resenting us, even if what we're saying is true, because they can't undo it. And we're making him feel bad. And as my dad said, you can't motivate people to do better by making them feel bad. So I really believe that choosing to be a coach in that situation instead of a critic is that if I say, stop hitting off your back foot, people are going to stop hitting off their back foot. So it's like we teach them what to do. Step into the ball. Keep your eyes on the ball. It's like instead of you're being rude to our customers, be very specific with please greet the customers by name. Please reference something they said before so that you can say, oh, how was that whale watch? How was that whatever, and say, we're so glad. So what are 3 specific things we want them to do? Imprint that. Reward that, notice that, appreciate that. And now we're motivating people to do better because we're coaching instead of criticizing.
But sometimes people do things and it just pisses you off, and it's going to feel so good to yell at them and vent a little bit. So what do you do with that energy?
Pema Chodron said, do not let people pull you into their storm, pull them into your peace. And I understand what you're saying about, I think our lower self wants to let off steam or wants to let someone have it or wants to put people in their place. And I really do believe that it is pausing long enough to ask ourselves, will I be sorry I said that in the morning? Will I regret, making that person pay for what they did for me? And then it is opting in the moment to behave in a way that we can be proud of. So at the end of the day, we look back. And here's an example of that. There was a woman in the speaking industry who was renowned for her servant leadership. She was universally loved. We had phone calls every month for almost 20 years. And a few years ago, she said something and my jaw literally dropped open. She said that a certain president was the best president we've ever had. Now, I believe just the opposite. And I could not believe that this person that I cared for and respected so much could believe that. And at the end of the phone call, I didn't know if we were ever going to talk again. And you know that this is happening all around the country. There are family members who no longer get together for holidays. There are good friends who no longer. So I kept wanting to be proactive about the situation. And thank heaven, I remembered something that happened when I was growing up. I grew up on a horse in a small Southern California valley, New Cuyama, and there were dry riverbeds, and there was quicksand in those dry riverbeds. And if you get in quicksand, it sucks you in and you cannot get out. It's very dangerous. So now, did we just not ride our horses anymore because we knew that there was quicksand there? No, we stayed out of the riverbeds to have the quicksand. And the same day I came to that clarity that we had more in common with this person than in conflict. And Ruth Bader Ginsburg was interviewed on CBS Sunday Morning. And the reporter was kind of incredulous because the reporter said, you go to see the opera with Judge Scalia and you are on opposite sides of the. How can you possibly be friends with someone when you have such polar opposite opinions? And you know what she said? We are different. We are one. And if there's many goals of this book and this whole approach to life, it is, are we going to focus on what we have in conflict, or are we going to focus on what we have in common? And was I going to throw away a 25-year friendship for this different belief? Or was I going to honor the 25-year friendship and just we mutually agreed that that was a quicksand conversation and we had a lot of things to talk about and not that?
Yeah, but what happens when in the course of all the things recently, let's say somebody that you've been close to starts to feel liberated enough to say something repugnant and racist?
Mm-hmm. Then
I don't care how long I've been friends with somebody, that's somebody who can't be in my tribe.
See, Fawn, I love what you're saying. It's because there's a wonderful saying that art, like morality, consists of drawing the line somewhere, right? So I believe that we have specific things that are non-negotiable, that are such a violation of our values or what we believe is important or true. We ask ourselves, am I going to change that person's mind? Are they going to change my mind? And has this now gone into a toxic relationship where spending time around this person is undermining my quality of life and hijacking, etc.? And at that point, we have first a conversation. It's like, I can tell we both have strong feelings about this. Let's agree to disagree about this. You're not going to change my mind. I'm not going to change yours. Let's focus. And if they try and tell you how wrong you are or dominate your time together you say, I'm going to say this once. We've been friends for 20 years and this is a non-negotiable for me as it is for you. And we make a decision right here. We either choose to spend time together with all the other things, or if you want to persist with this, then we're going to go our separate ways.
Yeah,
and
but
go
even
ahead.
if the person doesn't ever bring it up again, they
Interesting.
are not anyone I want in my world.
And it's your non-negotiable. That's what it sounds like. Then you know where your line is.
See, and I just love what you're saying, because I certainly don't want to come across, well, let's phrase this, what I do want. I want to make sure that what we're saying is realistic, not idealistic, and that there are people in our life. Fawn, I wrote a book about Take the Bully by the Horns. In this book, we talk about, here are all these ways to be proactive. Here are all these ways to be diplomatic and gracious and find solutions, not fault, etc. And if you're thinking, I've tried all that and it doesn't work, we're probably dealing with a 5%er. And I believe 95% of people have a conscience. I think 95% of people care what's fair. 5%ers don't want to cooperate. They want to control. They don't want a win-win. They want to win. And they will often do or say whatever they want to get their way. In fact, they often delight in. So with those kinds of people, we have a whole set of different tools. And one of them is going to fly in the face of what we've been taught. You want an example of that?
Yeah.
Is that when we're dealing with a 5%er, our strength taken to an extreme is our Achilles heel. Because with people who have a conscience, we have been taught to use I words. I don't think that's fair. I don't agree with that. I don't like being spoken to. And see, people with a conscience self-reflect and self-correct. They say, that wasn't fair to take that out on you. I'm sorry. That I was having a bad day. I dumped on you. Please forgive me. They are accountable. 5%ers are not accountable. So we do something, once again, we do not use I words with bullies, with controllers, with sociopaths, with narcissists, because I words backfire with 5%ers. We do the you, enough, you, back off, you, take your hand off my shoulder. You give me space. You never again. Because with 5%ers, see, we are looking, there's a pattern, right? This isn't a one-off. This is over time. They show up again and again like this, and we're not going to change their behavior, and we don't want to accommodate it or tolerate it because, are you ready for a profound quote in 5 words?
Yeah, always.
What we accept, we teach. And I know we've been taught when someone, slaps us, to turn the other cheek. Well, if we turn the other cheek with 5%ers, they'll slap that one too. Silence perpetuates and sanctions with 5%ers. So we speak up and stand up to them and keep the attention where it belongs, which is on their inappropriate behavior instead of our reaction to it.
Michelle, how's this hitting you?
Well, so that took me on a very different train of thought, but
I know why too.
Yeah, but it loops back to something that I want to ask about, and I'm not deflecting what you just asked me, Fawn, but I think it all kind of wraps up. All of this sounds like it makes sense. We're in an emotional moment. So the likelihood of me thinking, oh, here's the door opening for me to try these new skills is going to be tough. How do you help people remember to not react and to try something? Like, how do you learn or start picking up these new habits and behaviors whenever your whole life you've been doing it a different way?
Yeah. You just keep both asking such wise questions because they're the yabbits, right?
It's our hard-won wisdom.
Yes.
Yeah. So I was doing training with an airline, and a guy put his hand up and he said, Sam, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. He said, I use all those words on the left all the time. He said, I used them all in one sentence this morning. If someone came in and asked, and I said, well, no, you can't because you should have, etc. And he said, these words, though, come so automatically in the moment. How do I catch and correct? How do I change years of what's imprinted and is my default? So do we have a couple more minutes right here? Because we're going to do this in real time.
Let's do it.
Okay. And if people, once again, if they're not driving, is to get a piece of paper and to write in your best handwriting. And we're going to just say, I'm good at tongue fu. So I asked him and I asked everyone in the workshop, I am good at tongue fu. And
Tell
our best
people what tongue fu is, because they may think it's like sexual.
Tongue fu is martial arts for the mind and mouth. So it's a verbal form of kung fu. It's how to deal with difficult people without becoming one ourselves. And it's a book. It's in 17 languages, been selling around the world for more than 20 years. So what we're talking about is not just talking on eggshells. It's how to tongue fu a situation so that we are the pattern interrupt that moves people from conflict to.
And how many women need this skill set? Because we were, taught to be nice and don't be rude and don't be offensive to anybody. So anyway, just good Lord.
See, Michelle, I'm so glad you're bringing that up because that's actually what this is. Instead of avoiding or accommodating or something, it is asserting, correct? In clear ways, in firm ways, in proactive ways. However, once again, it's not suffering in silence. It's not letting people ruin our life. So if now write that same sentence with your other hand. It's, I am good at tongue fu. And then I asked him and I asked the workshop, I said, so how did it feel to write with that other hand? Well, it feels awkward and uncomfortable. We're not very good at it. There are 4 steps in habit change. And the first one is aware. Like many of the people had never heard that instead of saying, no, you can't because, you can say, yes, you can as soon as. They had not heard that instead of saying, but you can say, and, or etc. So first, they're aware of it. The second stage of skill acquisition or habit change is awkward. First time we drove a car, it's awkward. First time we used a laptop, awkward. We didn't give up though. We didn't say, I'm terrible at it. We say, of course, I'm not very good at it. It's different. I'm new. So we keep going. Then we get to the next stage of habit change, and that's applying. And if we apply the techniques we've been taught, we get better results. So if we think where to put our fingers on the keys, we can start saying what we mean. And you know what the fourth level is? Automatic. And at this point, when I play tennis, I don't even think, racket back, step into it, eyes on the ball, follow through. Now, the key, though, is that in terms of habit change, out of sight, out of mind, the key is, if people have been taking notes, is to post this where we see it throughout the day. Because now it's in sight, in mind. Now it's top of mind. Now, we start getting into it with our spouse, right? It's like, you were supposed to pick up the dog from the vet today. No, I told you I couldn't. And like, we look and we say, oops, okay, we've got 10 minutes to get to the vet. Who's going to pick up the dog, right? And it really does help us catch and correct in the moment, because it's insight in mind. And then it gets rewarded, because now we have a good evening with our partner instead of not talking to each other, right?
I do I keep affirmations, visualization. I do vision boarding and all of that. So very much that resonates with me.
See, another fabulous title from you. And again, for those of you who haven't already ordered Talking on Eggshells, get on it. What was the genesis of this title?
Of Talking on Eggshells?
Yeah.
It's that I had the pleasure of doing a lot of speaking for organizations, and I was doing one for Oracle, and they had 23 countries all around the world on this one call. And so what I do when I do that is it's only 20 minutes, and here's some examples, words to lose, words to use. And then we open it up for pop seats. We don't call them hot seats. I wrote a book called Pop, and it's okay, brainstorm in the spot. What's something that's happening? And you know that what you said made it worse, or you haven't said anything because you don't know what to say. And we brainstorm it in the spot. And one person was talking about a client that just seemed to take offense at everything. And he was one who said, I can't say anything right. It's like anything I say. And so he said, it's like I'm walking on eggshells. And I said, oh, well, actually, you're talking on eggshells. It's like ding, 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 ding.
Oh, yeah, write that one down.
That's so good. That's so good.
And what was the release date?
It's June 6th. So it's coming up now. And, I'm just so grateful, because already people have told me, and often they pick one situation that resonated with them. One story. In fact, the last day I was writing the book, I went for a walk in the morning to kind of imprint it. And I go by my neighborhood playground, and there's a woman there with her 2 young kids, and they start throwing rocks at each other. And she says, stop throwing rocks. Well, so what does she do? She gets louder. I said, stop throwing rocks. Dude, they're still. And this time she said, you either stop throwing rocks or we're leaving this park. She gave an ultimatum, right? Guess what happened? She marched over, she collected their stuff. She said, it's like, I'm tired of this. We're leaving now. They're bawling. Look at the ripple effect there. Yeah. No one's happy. No one got what they want. Who knows? They may not come back to the park again because they had a bad experience. The ripple effect of words. And so it was like what she had said was that from now on, it's like, instead of stop hitting your brother or stop throwing rocks, it's give each other space. This shift in her mind from the difference from getting angry and focused on what they're doing wrong and how exasperating it is to no. In fact, Esther Perel says, behind every criticism is a veiled wish, right? Mm-hmm. You said, what can I do in the middle of the moment when I'm about to let it loose? Say, what do I wish? Say that. It will almost always help us move forward, right? Instead of anchor us in the emotion.
So how would you phrase that instead of stop throwing rocks?
I'd either say, put the rocks down and let's go to the slide. I mean, this is classic behavior modification, correct? Okay. It is like, in fact, Do you know what one of my favorite movies was with the kids? Oh, this is so wonderful. It's called The Snowman, and it has most ethereal music. And my sons who grew up in Maui and I would watch it. And the mother is in the kitchen washing the dishes, and the two kids are out throwing snowballs and building a snowball. And one rears back and throws a snowball, and it hits the window. And she opens the window and she leans out. And you know what she says? Do something different. Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah, that's great.
I tell you what, it changed my life as a parent whenever I would say the things like, yes, you can do that after you clean your room. When you clean your room, you can do the thing. And it was like, because I was constantly just pick up shoes to get this thing. Why are you leaving your plate out? And I mean, I don't want to be a nag, and I don't want to be that way at work. I don't want to be that way in relationship. It's exhausting and you're miserable. And learning just the little tricks that I know have been such game changers. And so hearing all of these things that you're sharing is like just leveling us up. I am excited for people to check out the book, Talking on Eggshells. I'm excited for them to check out your website, because I know you had the download. Share your website with us.
Sam, your website is?
Is Sam Horn, SAMHORN.com. And if they go to the section on Talking on Eggshells, guess what? We actually have a words to lose, words to use template that we will send you for free. And we have, This Is Your Brain on Eggshells. It's 9 phrases never to say in the heat of the moment.
And they're great.
Give me a couple of them. I want to know if I've said them.
It's, are you listening to me?
Yeah.
How many times do I have to tell you?
I haven't done that one, but I have to check the rest. Well, Sam, you've been amazing.
Yes.
Michelle, I think we may need to have another visit from Sam Horn.
I think we do too.
Huh?
I think we do too. I think what would be kind of fun is thinking of a few scenarios and kind of talking through and doing a little more role play on a future visit. I think because there's some real things that I know our audience is struggling with.
So,
maybe you can ask your community to submit, and let's make this real life, right? It's like, I'm working for a manager or a boss who's very critical, only notice, and I can't afford to leave. And yet I'm miserable every day. What do I say?
We need an event, Fawn.
All right. Brainstorming to come.
Yes.
We have to say goodbye to our listeners. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back again next week. And Sam, thank you so much for joining us.
I've thoroughly enjoyed this. Hope people found it interesting and useful.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining the Hard-Won Wisdom podcast with best-selling author Fawn Germer and corporate innovator Michelle Brigman. Join us weekly for career and life-changing conversations with some of today's most influential thought leaders, senior executives, and trailblazers who will share their mentoring wisdom. This podcast is brought to you by the Women's Leadership Network. Visit hardwonwisdom.com for more on this podcast and for links to Fawn and Michelle's web pages and social media. Also, be sure to rate, subscribe, and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. We really appreciate that effort, and we'll see you next week.